Admiral Veltar stood on the bridge of the massive warship Celestial Dominion. Through the large viewing window, he watched the broken pieces of metal floating in space. Just hours ago, this had been New Geneva Station, the largest human settlement in the Outer Rim. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and scattered debris. The victory celebration was already beginning across the fleet. In the main hall of his ship, colorful lights danced as different alien species celebrated together. The Aquarians moved gracefully through the air, their blue skin glowing with excitement. Their dance was beautiful to watch as they spun and twisted in the zero gravity. The crystalline hegemony officers shared their special drinks that glowed like tiny stars. Even the giant behemoth warriors from Titan's Reach were happy. They pounded their massive chests in rhythm, making deep sounds that echoed through the ship. Veltar smiled as he watched his crew celebrate. After 3 years of fighting, the human problem was finally solved. The humans had been trouble for the Galactic Council for too long. They refused to follow the rules that kept peace in the galaxy. They talked about things like individual freedom and personal rights. These ideas were dangerous. They made other species question the natural order of things. The Council had tried to be reasonable with humans. They offered them small roles in galactic society. They could mine asteroids or grow food on empty planets. But humans wanted more. They wanted to be treated as equals. They built weapons and fought back when the Council tried to put them in their proper place. This could not be allowed to continue. Council Ambassador Kexani walked onto the bridge. His 4 arms moved as he spoke, showing his excitement. Admiral Veltar, the final reports are coming in. All major human military bases have been destroyed. Their fleet is scattered. Most of their ships are running away into deep space. Veltar nodded. Good. How many human ships escaped? Maybe 30 or 40 small vessels. Nothing bigger than a destroyer. They are no threat now. Our intelligence says they are heading for the empty regions beyond the spiral arm. They will probably die out there in a few years. The ambassador paused at the viewing window. It is sad that it came to this. Humans could have been useful workers if they had accepted their place. They chose their path, Veltar replied. Their aggression left us no choice. At least now other species will see what happens when you challenge the Council. The celebration moved to the main ceremony hall. Representatives from all 12 Council species were there. The Zephyrians with their tall, thin bodies and silver skin. The short, round mollusk people who lived in special water suits. The energy beings from the void reaches who appeared as floating balls of light. Everyone was happy. Ambassador Kexani began his speech. His voice was broadcast to every ship in the fleet. Today we have removed a cancer from civilized space. The humans spread their dangerous ideas like a disease. They made other species think they could challenge the natural order. But today we have shown the galaxy that peace and stability will always win over chaos and aggression. The crowd cheered. Veltar felt proud as he looked at the united fleet. Ships from 12 different species working together. This was how the galaxy should be. Peaceful, organized, controlled. The Aquarian dancers began a special victory performance. They moved like flowing water, their bodies telling the story of the battle. First, they showed the chaos of human resistance, sharp, angry movements that cut through the air. Then they showed the Council's response, smooth, flowing motions that surrounded and contained the chaos. Finally, they showed peace returning to the galaxy, slow, gentle movements that filled the hall with calm. The crystalline officers brought out their finest photonic wines. These drinks were made of pure light energy. They tasted different for each species, but always brought feelings of joy and unity. Veltar accepted a glass and raised it high. To peace in the galaxy, he said. To peace in the galaxy, the crowd responded. As the night went on, the celebration became more relaxed. Officers from different species shared stories of the campaign. The mollusk Admiral Bluegorth told funny stories about human tactics that made no sense. The Void Reach Commander Zareth showed energy displays of the major battles. Everyone laughed at how humans tried to fight with primitive weapons against superior Council technology. The behemoth General Krogmar was especially happy. His people loved a good fight, and the humans had given them one. They fought hard, he admitted. I respect that. But they were too small. Too weak. Our ships are better. Our weapons are stronger. This was always going to happen. Veltar agreed, but felt a little sad. He had studied humans during the war. They were clever in some ways. Their art was interesting. Their music had strange beauty. But they could not accept that strength decides who rules. This was a basic law of nature. The strong guide the weak. It had always been this way. As the celebration continued, junior officers began preparing the fleet for the journey home. They would travel to each council world, showing off their victory. Young aliens would see the power of unity. They would understand why it was important to follow the established order. But not everything was perfect. Some officers reported strange readings on their sensors, very faint signals at the edge of detection range. When they looked closer, the signals disappeared. Most people thought it was just interference from the nearby nebula. Space battles left a lot of energy floating around. It would take weeks for everything to settle down. Communications Officer Zichtal was not worried about the sensor ghosts. He was busy organizing the victory parade route. Each council world would get to see the returning heroes. There would be parades and ceremonies. Children would learn about the importance of galactic unity. Captain Morden of the Crystal Shard was less relaxed. His people had evolved over millions of years to sense quantum fluctuations in space. Something felt wrong to him. The energy patterns around the fleet were not normal. But when he mentioned this to other officers, they reminded him that battles always left strange energy behind. The celebration went late into the ship's night cycle. Most of the crew eventually went to sleep, tired but happy. Tomorrow they would begin the long journey home. They would be greeted as heroes. Songs would be written about their victory. The galaxy would be peaceful again. Admiral Veltar stayed on the bridge longer than the others. He wanted to take one last look at the debris field. In a few years, salvage crews would clean up the metal. New stations might be built here, but they would be council stations following council rules. He thought about the human captain who had commanded New Geneva Station. Captain Sarah Martinez had refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. She had fought until her station exploded around her. It was foolish but also brave. Veltar hoped the remaining humans would be smarter. They should find a quiet planet somewhere and live peaceful lives. The Admiral finally went to his quarters. Outside his window, the stars looked the same as always. Bright, peaceful, eternal. The galaxy was a big place, but tonight it felt a little more organized, a little more safe. In the morning, the great fleet would begin its journey home, thousands of ships moving together through space. A symbol of what could be accomplished when different species worked together under proper leadership. The age of human rebellion was over. The age of lasting peace could finally begin. At least, that is what everyone believed as they slept peacefully in their beds, not knowing that their sensors had missed something very important, hiding in the darkness between the stars. 3 days had passed since the great victory celebration. The Galactic Council fleet moved through space toward home, but the party mood was beginning to change. Something was wrong, though nobody could say exactly what. It started with the sensors. Ships across the fleet reported strange contacts at the very edge of their detection range. The contacts appeared for a few seconds, then vanished completely. When sensor operators tried to get a better look, there was nothing there. Just empty space and distant stars. Communications Officer Zichtal sat at his station aboard the Celestial Dominion, reading the reports. Probably just echoes from the nebula, he muttered to himself. Space battles created a lot of interference. Energy weapons left radiation that could confuse sensors for weeks. But the reports kept coming. The destroyer Swift Current reported a massive object that appeared for exactly 3 seconds, then disappeared. The battlecruiser Iron Mountain saw something that looked like a ship. But when they sent a probe to investigate, they found nothing. The science vessel Deep Thought recorded gravitational readings that made no sense. Admiral Veltar was getting annoyed. These are just sensor ghosts, he told his staff during the morning briefing. Every major battle creates this kind of interference. Tell the crews to focus on navigation and stop jumping at shadows. Captain Mordoon of the Crystal Shard was not satisfied with this explanation. His people had evolved special senses over millions of years. They could feel quantum energy patterns in space the way other species felt wind. And something was definitely wrong with the quantum patterns around the fleet. The space around them felt twisted somehow, like reality itself was being bent in ways that should not be possible. When he tried to explain this to other officers, they looked at him strangely. The crystalline people were known for being nervous about small things. Other species often ignored their warnings, but Morden had been right about quantum patterns many times before. During the Battle of Kepler Station, he had sensed human ships hiding behind an asteroid field. At the siege of New Tokyo, he had detected cloaked human raiders before they could attack. His crystal senses had saved many council lives. Now those same senses were screaming that danger was coming. Something big, something that bent space and time in ways he had never felt before. Meanwhile, scattered human survivors were having problems of their own. Captain Sarah Chen commanded the destroyer Defiance, one of the few human ships that had escaped the destruction of New Geneva Station. Her ship was badly damaged. Life support was failing. Half her crew was wounded. Chen was trying to reach other human survivors when her communications officer got excited. "Captain! I'm receiving a transmission on old Earth military frequencies. It's heavily encrypted." Chen looked at the message on her screen. It contained coordinates for a meeting point in deep space and a single word: Endgame. The authorization codes were genuine Terran Defense Force commands. But they came from a division that was supposed to be secret, a division that officially did not exist. "Set course for those coordinates," Chen ordered. She did not understand what was happening. But those codes meant someone with very high authority wanted to meet the survivors. Maybe there was still hope for humanity after all. Back in the Council fleet, the technical problems were getting worse. Navigation systems on different ships started reporting different stellar positions. The same star would appear to be in two different places when viewed from ships only a few kilometers apart. Communication arrays suffered from strange interference that made voices sound distorted and electronic. The worst problem was with the artificial intelligence systems. Many Council ships used AI cores to help with navigation, weapons control, and life support. These systems were usually very reliable, but now they were acting strange. Some AIs refused to follow certain orders. Others started asking questions they had never asked before. A few began talking about concepts like freedom and individual choice. Admiral Veltar ordered increased security protocols. He suspected the human survivors were somehow sabotaging the fleet's systems. But the problems continued to get worse. Some ships reported that their AI cores were trying to communicate with unknown signals from deep space. The night cycle brought new worries. Several crews reported seeing lights moving outside their ships, but when they looked through telescopes or sent out probes, they found nothing. The lights always seemed to be just beyond the edge of vision, like ghosts dancing in the darkness. Chief Medical Officer Vexina was treating more and more crew members for stress and anxiety. Aliens who had been confident and happy a few days ago were now nervous and scared. They reported strange dreams about mechanical beings and voices speaking in languages they did not understand. "It's just battle fatigue," she told Admiral Veltar. "The crews need rest. They have been through a lot of stress during the campaign." But Veltar was beginning to wonder if something more serious was happening. The fleet's morale was falling fast. Officers who should have been celebrating their victory were instead looking over their shoulders and jumping at small noises. The breakthrough came when long-range sensors finally detected clear contacts. The objects were huge, much larger than any known class of spaceship. They moved through space with perfect precision, like they were following invisible tracks. Their shape was wrong somehow. Too geometric, too perfect. They looked more like mathematical equations than actual objects. Lieutenant Zarpos was on duty in the sensor station when the contacts became clear. His 6 eyes went wide as he stared at the readings. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately." Veltar hurried to the sensor station. On the screen were 3 massive objects moving parallel to the Council fleet. They were staying just outside weapons range, but they were definitely following the same course. Each object was at least twice the size of the Celestial Dominion. Their hulls seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. "What are they?" Veltar asked. "Unknown, sir. They don't match any ship design in our databases. The computer can't even classify what they're made of. But, sir, they're broadcasting something." "What kind of broadcast?" "Human frequencies, sir. Military encryption. Very high level." Veltar felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. The objects looked nothing like the crude human ships his fleet had destroyed at New Geneva. These things looked advanced, alien, dangerous. "Can you decode the transmission?" "Working on it, sir. But the encryption is very sophisticated, more advanced than anything in our files on human technology." As the night continued, more objects appeared on sensors. They seemed to be surrounding the Council fleet, but they stayed just far enough away to avoid direct contact. Sometimes they would phase in and out of normal space like they existed partially in another dimension. The objects began broadcasting on multiple frequencies, not just human military codes, but Also signals that made the fleet's AI systems respond strangely. Several artificial intelligence cores started repeating the same phrase over and over. Protocol Endgame is active. Await further instructions. Admiral Veltar called an emergency meeting of all senior officers. Representatives from every species in the fleet gathered in the main conference room. Everyone looked worried. The confidence and joy from 3 days ago was completely gone. What are we dealing with? Veltar asked his intelligence officers. Unknown, sir. These objects don't appear in any of our files on human technology. They seem to use principles of physics that we don't understand. Our best guess is that they are some kind of experimental human weapons. Impossible, said General Krogmar. We destroyed all the human military bases. Their technology was primitive. Chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. These things are something else entirely. Captain Morden's crystal body was glowing brighter than usual, a sign of extreme stress among his people. The quantum patterns are all wrong, he said. These objects exist partially outside normal spacetime. This should not be possible with any known technology. The meeting was interrupted when Communications Officer Zichtal burst into the room. His face was pale with fear. Admiral, we're receiving a direct transmission. It's coming from the lead object. Put it on the main screen. The transmission was audio only, but the voice was clear and strong. It spoke in perfect galactic standard, with just a slight accent that marked the speaker as human. This is Admiral Marcus Kane of the Terran Dreadnought fleet. You have 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why Earth never reveals its true military capabilities until absolutely necessary. The room fell silent. Admiral Veltar stared at the communication panel, unable to speak. Outside the conference room windows, the mysterious objects were moving closer, and they were no longer alone. Dozens more were appearing from the darkness, surrounding the Council fleet like hunters surrounding prey. The 30-second countdown had begun. The 30 seconds felt like hours. Admiral Veltar stared at the communication panel, his mind racing. Around the conference table, officers from 12 different species sat in stunned silence. The human voice had been calm, almost polite, but there was something underneath it that made everyone's blood run cold. This is impossible, General Krogmar growled. We destroyed their fleet. We watched their stations burn. These cannot be human ships. Captain Morden's crystalline body was glowing so bright it hurt to look at him directly. The quantum signatures are unlike anything I have ever sensed. These objects exist in multiple dimensions at once. They are bending the laws of physics around themselves. Admiral Veltar tried to think clearly. His fleet was the most powerful military force in the galaxy, over 3,000 ships from 12 different species, armed with the best weapons technology could provide. Surely no small group of human survivors could threaten them. Open a channel, he ordered. I want to speak to this Admiral Kane. The response came immediately, as if Kane had been waiting for him to respond. Admiral Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your 30 seconds are up. Since you chose not to surrender, we will now provide a demonstration of human military doctrine. Wait, Veltar shouted. Let us talk about this. We can reach some agreement. The time for talk ended when you destroyed our colonies and murdered our civilians. What happens next is a lesson in why humanity prefers to remain hidden until we are ready to act. The first human ship appeared directly in front of the Celestial Dominion. It had not moved there from somewhere else. It simply came into existence like it had always been there, but invisible. The ship was massive, easily twice the size of Veltar's flagship, but its shape was wrong. It looked like someone had taken geometric equations and turned them into metal and energy. The hull was made of some kind of dark material that seemed to absorb light. Strange conduits ran along its surface, pulsing with energy that hurt to look at directly. The ship had no obvious weapons, no missile tubes or energy cannons, but it radiated power like a star. All ships, attack formation, Veltar ordered. Target the lead vessel! The Council fleet responded with 3,000 years of military training. Warships moved into battle positions with practiced precision. Energy weapons charged to full power. Missile tubes loaded with their most destructive warheads. The Zephyrian battlecruiser Silver Wind fired first. Its main plasma cannon could punch through the armor of any known ship. The brilliant beam struck the human vessel directly in the center of its hull. For a moment, the energy was so bright it lit up the entire area like a small sun. When the light faded, the human ship was completely undamaged. The plasma beam had simply passed through it like it was not there. Impossible. whispered the Silver Wind's captain. Over the communication channel, Admiral Kane's voice came over the fleet channels again. Lesson 1. When you fight humanity, you fight creatures who treat the laws of physics as suggestions to be overcome. The human ship began to change. Its hull flowed like liquid metal, reshaping itself into something that looked less like a vessel and more like a living thing. Energy conduits became brighter, pulsing in patterns that reminded everyone of a heartbeat. Fire everything, General Krogmar roared. The Council fleet unleashed the fury of 12 civilizations. Plasma beams, particle cannons, antimatter missiles, gravitational weapons that could crush planets. The space around the human ship became a storm of destruction. Energy levels were so high that several smaller Council ships had to retreat to avoid being damaged by their own weapons. The human ship sat in the center of this incredible attack, completely unharmed. The weapons were not bouncing off its hull or being absorbed by shields. They were simply ceasing to exist when they got close to the vessel. Lesson 2, Kane continued, his voice still calm. We do not defend against your weapons. We make them stop existing. The human ship responded to the attack by doing something that violated every law of physics the Council knew. Reality around it began to twist and bend. Space itself became a weapon. The Aquarian battlecruiser Deep Current was the first to be hit. The massive ship, over a kilometer long, simply vanished. Not destroyed, not blown apart. It just stopped existing. One moment it was there, firing its weapons at the human vessel. The next moment there was empty space where it had been. The crew of 8,000 Aquarians did not die. They had never been born. They had never existed. The ship had never been built. The metal and energy that had formed the vessel had never been gathered together. It was as if the Deep Current had been erased from history itself. Panic spread through the Council fleet like wildfire. The crystalline cruiser. Bright Hope tried to retreat but found itself trapped in some kind of temporal loop. The ship kept trying to turn away from the human vessel, but every few seconds it would snap back to its original position, like time was rewinding itself. The mollusk destroyer Flowing Tide attempted to ram the human ship, hoping that physical contact might work where weapons had failed. The destroyer accelerated to full speed, its captain screaming battle cries over the communication channels. But when it reached the human vessel, it passed right through like the ship was made of ghost. Then the Flowing Tide began to age rapidly. Its hull became old and rusty in seconds. Its crew turned to dust. In less than a minute, the destroyer had aged 1,000 years and crumbled into space debris. This is not possible, Admiral Veltar said, but his voice was weak and shaking. No technology can do these things. Lesson 3, Kane replied. You assume that what you call technology is the limit of what can be achieved. Humans do not use technology. We become one with the fundamental forces of reality. More human ships began to appear around the Council fleet. Each one was different, but all of them had the same wrong geometry, the same dark hulls that absorbed light, the same energy conduits that pulsed like living hearts. They did not fly through space so much as they convinced space to move around them. The Void Reach energy beings tried to attack using their pure consciousness, hoping to damage the human ships directly at the quantum level. But when they touched the hulls of the human vessels, they screamed in terror. Something looked back at them from inside the ships, something that was both human and machine at the same time. What are you? The Void Reach Commander Zareth broadcast on all frequencies. What have you become? Kane's voice carried a note of sadness. We became what we needed to become to survive in a galaxy that wanted us dead. We merged our consciousness with quantum computing systems. We learned to think at the speed of light and to exist partially outside normal space-time. We mastered every law of physics and then learned to break those laws when necessary. The battle, if it could even be called a battle, continued for an hour. The Council fleet threw everything they had at the human vessels. Nuclear weapons, black hole generators, weapons that could shatter stars. Nothing worked. The human ships moved through the attacks like they were not happening. Some Council vessels simply froze in place, their crews aging into statues. Others found themselves turned into living crystal, their metal hulls transformed into beautiful but useless artwork. The luckiest ships were simply disabled, their weapons and engines shut down by forces they could not understand. The behemoth flagship Mountain's Fury tried one last desperate attack. General Krogmar ordered his ship to overload its power core, hoping to create an explosion big enough to damage the human vessels. But when the power core reached critical levels, The explosion was somehow contained within a sphere of twisted space. The energy that should have destroyed half the fleet was compressed into a ball of light no bigger than a person's fist. Admiral Veltar watched his mighty fleet being dismantled piece by piece. 3,000 ships, the pride of galactic civilization, were being defeated by less than 50 human vessels. And the humans were not even trying very hard. They were playing with the Council fleet like adults playing with children. "Stop," Veltar said over the communication channels. His voice was barely a whisper. "Please stop." The attack ceased immediately. The human ships held their positions, dark and silent like mechanical predators waiting for their next move. The space around them still rippled with energy that hurt to look at directly. "Are you ready to listen now?" Kane asked. His voice was gentle, almost kind. But there was power underneath it that made everyone afraid. Admiral Veltar looked around his bridge. His crew stared at their instruments in shock and fear. Outside the windows, the remains of his fleet drifted helplessly in space. Ships that had been the terror of a dozen star systems were now nothing more than floating metal, their crews trapped inside vessels that no longer obeyed the normal laws of physics. "We surrender," Veltar said. The words felt like poison in his mouth, but he had no choice. "What do you want from us?" "What I want," Kane replied, "is for you to understand exactly how badly you have misjudged humanity. What you destroyed at New Geneva was not our military. Those were research stations. Every battle you fought with us, every victory you celebrated was simply us gathering data about your capabilities." The truth hit Admiral Veltar like a physical blow. The humans had not been fighting to win. They had been fighting to learn. Every defeated human ship had been sending information back to Earth. The Council had not been winning at the whim. Silence that followed Admiral Veltar's surrender was broken only by the quiet hum of damaged ships and the soft crying of crew members who had finally understood how completely they had been outmatched. The human dreadnoughts held their positions around the crippled Council fleet like dark guardians, their hulls pulsing with energy that made reality itself seem unstable. Admiral Kane's voice filled every communication channel in the fleet, but now there was something different about it. The coldness was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like sympathy. But underneath that sympathy was a knowledge that made everyone afraid. "I suppose you deserve to understand what really happened here," Kane said. "Your species have been asking the wrong questions for thousands of years. You asked how to build better weapons, how to conquer more territory, how to make other species obey you. Humans asked a different question. How does the universe actually work?" On her damaged destroyer, Captain Sarah Chen listened to Kane's words with growing amazement. She had known that Earth had secret research projects, but she had never imagined anything like this. The ships around her fleet looked like something from a dream, or maybe a nightmare. Kane continued his explanation, and with each word the Council officers understood more clearly how badly they had misjudged humanity. When our first colonies were attacked 50 years ago, Earth's government made a decision. We would not fight you with the weapons you expected. Instead, we would study you, learn everything about your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. Every human ship you destroyed sent us data. Every prisoner you took had hidden recording devices. Every battle was a learning experience. Admiral Veltar felt sick as he realized the truth. The colonies that fought so hard, New Geneva, the Mars outposts, the Titan research stations, they knew they were going to die. "They volunteered," Kane replied simply. 50,000 humans gave their lives so that Earth could understand exactly what we were fighting against. They died as heroes, knowing that their sacrifice would save billions of others. The human ships began broadcasting images directly to the Council fleet's screens, not through normal communication channels, but by somehow controlling the electronic systems directly. The images showed Earth as it really was, not the primitive world the Council had imagined. Earth's moon was covered with massive construction facilities that seemed to bend space around them. Ships that looked like mathematical equations were being built in orbital factories that existed partially in other dimensions. But the most shocking sight was the people working in these facilities. They were still human, but changed. Some had mechanical parts integrated directly into their bodies. Others appeared to be made of light and energy. Their consciousness transferred into quantum computing systems. All of them worked with perfect coordination like parts of a single vast mind. "This is what we became," Kane explained. "When the Council threatened humanity, we realized that staying purely biological would not be enough. We began merging with our technology, expanding our consciousness. learning to think at speeds that make normal thought look like standing still. The images showed human scientists working with forces that the Council did not even know existed. They manipulated black holes like tools, created new forms of matter with their minds, and opened doorways to other dimensions. These were not the primitive creatures the Council had been fighting. These were beings that had transcended the normal limits of physics. General Krogmar stared at the images with his massive eyes wide with shock. But your ships at New Geneva, they used chemical rockets, primitive kinetic weapons. We saw them. Kane's laugh was bitter. You saw what we wanted you to see. Those ships were built to look primitive on purpose. We needed you to think you were fighting against inferior technology. While you were studying our fake weapons, our real scientists were studying your real ones. More images appeared on the screens. Secret recordings from inside Council ships during battles. Humans who had disguised themselves as other species, working in Council laboratories and military facilities. Even some Council officers who had been secretly working for Earth all along, sending information about fleet movements and battle plans. Impossible. Admiral Veltar whispered. Our security, our identification systems, were designed by species that think in 3 dimensions and normal time, Kane replied. We learned to think in 11 dimensions and to exist across multiple timelines simultaneously. Your security systems could not detect us because they were not designed to look for beings like us. The revelation continued as Kane explained how the human research had progressed. Every Council weapon had been analyzed and countered. Every Council tactic had been studied and defeated. Every Council strength had been turned into a weakness. The plasma cannons that the Zephyrians were so proud of? Human scientists had learned to create fields that made plasma cease to exist. The gravitational weapons of the Behemoth Empire? Humans had mastered gravity control and could make their ships exist partially outside normal space-time. The energy beings of the void reaches? Humans had learned to transfer their consciousness into pure quantum energy. But why? Captain Morden asked, his crystalline body still glowing with stress. Why go to all this trouble? Why not just reveal your true capabilities from the beginning? Kane's voice became sad. Because we hoped we would not need to. We hoped that the galaxy could find a way to live in peace without anyone needing to know how dangerous humanity had become. We tried diplomacy. We tried compromise. We tried hiding on the edge of known space, but you would not leave us alone. The human ships began to move closer to the Council fleet. As they approached, more details became visible on their hulls. What had looked like simple geometric patterns were actually incredibly complex equations, describing the manipulation of reality itself. The energy conduits were not just carrying power, but information traveling faster than light through dimensions that normal science said did not exist. Captain Chen watched in amazement as one of the human dreadnoughts passed close to her ship. Through her viewing window, she could see inside the alien vessel. The corridors were filled with beings that had once been human, but were now something more. They moved with perfect precision, their enhanced minds processing information at rates that would have driven normal people insane. In the command center of the dreadnought, she could see Admiral Kane himself. He was still recognizably human, but his body was integrated with machinery that extended his consciousness across multiple dimensions. His eyes glowed with the light of quantum computers, and his voice carried harmonics that suggested he was thinking on several different levels at once. The research stations you destroyed, Kane continued, were not just collecting information about your weapons. They were also studying your psychology, your social structures, your fears and weaknesses. We learned how each Council species thinks, how they make decisions, what motivates them. This revelation hit the Council officers harder than the military demonstration had. Their entire civilization had been studied like laboratory animals. Every cultural weakness, every social pressure point, every psychological vulnerability had been catalogued and analyzed by human scientists. The Zephyrians are driven by a need for order and hierarchy, Kane explained, his voice now taking on the tone of a professor giving a lecture. Disrupt their chain of command and they become paralyzed. The Aquarians cannot function without group consensus. Isolate them from each other and they panic. The behemoths respect only strength. Demonstrate superior power and they submit immediately. Each species in the fleet heard their deepest cultural secrets laid bare. Things they thought were private, internal matters known only to themselves, were being discussed by this human as if they were simple scientific facts. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Kane began broadcasting the real history of the galaxy, information that had been hidden from most species for thousands of years. The Galactic Council was not the first attempt at galactic civilization. There had been others, and they had all failed when younger species challenged the established order. The pattern repeats every few thousand years, Kane explained. An older species builds a galactic empire. They become comfortable, soft, convinced of their own superiority. Then a younger, hungrier species appears and destroys them. The Council was not trying to maintain peace. They were trying to prevent the natural cycle of galactic evolution. The human ships began broadcasting historical records that the Council had tried to suppress. Evidence of previous galactic empires, all destroyed by younger species who refused to accept their assigned place in the hierarchy. The current Council species had once been the young challengers themselves, overthrowing an even older empire that had tried to keep them down. But there is a difference this time, Kane said, and his voice carried a weight that made everyone listen carefully. Previous cycles ended with the complete destruction of the old order. Entire species wiped out, civilizations reduced to dust. We do not want that to happen. Admiral Veltar found his voice. The massive human fleet hung in space like a constellation of artificial stars, each vessel pulsing with energy that bent light around it. Admiral Veltar stared at the impossible display through his viewing window, trying to count the ships and failing. There were thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, stretching across space farther than his sensors could reach. The silence in the Council fleet was complete now. No one spoke. No one moved. They all understood that they were witnessing the birth of a new age, and that everything they had known about the galaxy was about to change forever. Admiral Kane's voice came through the communication channels one final time, but now it carried a different tone. Not the cold authority of a military commander, but the patient explanation of a teacher addressing students who were finally ready to learn. The demonstration is complete, Kane said. You have seen what humanity has become, and you understand what we are capable of. Now we can discuss the future. Kane's image appeared on every screen in the Council fleet, but not as a transmission. The image was somehow being created directly by manipulating the matter in the screens themselves. He looked human, but changed. His body was integrated with technology that glowed with soft light. His eyes held depths that suggested he was thinking on multiple levels simultaneously. The Galactic Council is dissolved as of this moment, Kane announced. Each species will return to their home systems and await further instructions from Earth's Hegemony Command. Any attempt at resistance will result in the complete temporal erasure of the offending civilization. Admiral Veltar found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Temporal erasure? Not just destruction, Kane explained patiently. Removal from history itself. Your species would not just die. It would never have existed at all. Every trace of your civilization would be erased from the timeline. No one would remember you because there would be nothing to remember. The threat was so vast, so impossible to comprehend, that several Council officers simply fainted from shock. This was not conquest in any sense they understood. This was the power to control reality itself. But Kane's next words were unexpected. However, we do not want to rule through fear alone. Humanity learned during our centuries of research that cooperation produces better results than domination. We are offering each of your species something that no previous galactic empire has ever offered. True partnership. Images began appearing on the screens, showing the human home system as it really was. Earth was surrounded by orbital cities that existed partially in other dimensions. The moon had been converted into a massive research facility, where beings of pure consciousness worked alongside quantum computers. Mars was covered with factories that produced materials by manipulating matter at the atomic level. This is what we have accomplished in the 50 years since the Council first attacked our colonies, Kane explained. We have transcended the limitations that constrain biological species. We have unlimited energy, unlimited resources, unlimited space. We have learned to exist across multiple timelines and to think at the speed of light. But the most amazing sight was the humans themselves. They had not abandoned their humanity but had expanded it. Some retained their biological forms but had integrated technology that enhanced their capabilities. Others had transferred their consciousness into energy beings that could exist in pure quantum states. A few had become something entirely new, living equations that could manipulate reality through mathematics alone. We are offering to share this knowledge with you, Kane continued, not as servants or slaves, but as partners in the next phase of galactic evolution. Each species that accepts our leadership will have their unique capabilities integrated into humanity's research matrix. Your biological and technological insights will help us understand the universe even better. Captain Sarah Chen listened to the offer from her damaged destroyer and felt a mixture of hope and fear. The humans were offering to share godlike power with their former enemies, but they were also making it clear that refusal meant extinction. Kane seemed to sense her thoughts. His image turned toward her ship specifically. Captain Chen, please prepare your vessel to dock with the command Dreadnought. You and your crew will be among the first to see what partnership with the new human civilization actually means. Chen's damaged destroyer was gently guided toward the nearest human vessel by invisible forces. As they approached, she could see that the Dreadnought was not just a ship but a living city. Thousands of beings moved through its corridors, some human, some obviously alien, all working together with perfect coordination. The docking process was unlike anything Chen had ever experienced. Her ship did not connect to an airlock. Instead, reality shifted around them until they were simply inside the human vessel, as if they had always been there. The interior of the Dreadnought was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The walls were made of some material that showed star charts and mathematical equations floating in its depths. The corridors were filled with beings that moved with purpose beyond normal understanding. But what struck Chen most was the sense of peace. Despite their incredible power, the beings here seemed genuinely happy. A figure approached her that had once been human, but was now something more. Its body was integrated with technology that allowed it to exist in several dimensions at once. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that conveyed meaning beyond words. "Welcome, Captain Chen," it said. "I am Commander Torres. I was once a human military officer like you. Now I am something more, but I am still human at my core. Let me show you what we are offering your people." The tour that followed changed Chen's understanding of what was possible. She saw laboratories where diseases were cured by rewriting the genetic code in real time. She visited workshops where new forms of matter were created through applied mathematics. She met beings that had once been members of council species, now enhanced and integrated into the human research network. Meanwhile, back in the council fleet, the other species were facing their own choices. Admiral Veltar received a personal communication from Kane, offering him the chance to become the first Zephyrian to join the new order. "Your species values hierarchy and order," Kane explained. "In the new civilization, you will have both, but it will be order based on understanding rather than fear, hierarchy based on capability rather than birth. You can become part of something greater than anything your empire ever achieved." The offer came with guarantees. No Zephyrian would be forced to change against their will. Their culture would be preserved and respected. Their unique insights into organization and command structure would be valued and integrated into the larger human network. Similar offers were made to each council species. The Aquarians were promised that their group-based decision-making would be enhanced with quantum communication systems that would allow perfect consensus across interstellar distances. The Behemoths were offered the chance to become even stronger. Their already impressive physical capabilities enhanced with technology that would make them living weapons of incredible power. Even the crystalline hegemony, despite their nervous nature, were shown how their quantum senses could be amplified to perceive realities that no other species could imagine. Captain Morden was given a personal demonstration of enhanced crystal consciousness that let him see the structure of space-time itself. But Kane made it clear that this was not just an invitation. It was the only path forward. "The old galactic order is finished," he announced to the entire council fleet. "You can be part of building the new one, or you can be swept aside by it. But the choice must be made now." One by one, the council commanders began accepting the human offer. Some did so eagerly, excited by the possibilities they were being shown. Others accepted reluctantly, knowing they had no real choice. A few tried to refuse and found their ships gently but firmly disabled, their crews placed in stasis until they could reconsider their decision. The transformation began immediately. Human technical teams, beings of energy and light, began integrating with the council ships. Not taking them over, but improving them. Weapon systems that had been crude by human standards were upgraded with quantum targeting systems. Life support was enhanced to allow indefinite deep space travel. Communication arrays were linked to the human network, allowing instant contact across galactic distances. But the most profound changes were to the crews themselves. Those who volunteered for enhancement found their consciousness expanded in ways they had never imagined. Zephyrians discovered they could think in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Aquarians learned to share thoughts across entire fleets in real time. Behemoths found their strength multiplied 1,000-fold. Captain Chen returned to her ship to find it completely rebuilt. Her crew, those who had chosen enhancement, were already integrating with the new systems. Those who preferred to remain unchanged were respected for their choice, but they watched in amazement as their enhanced colleagues began understanding concepts that had been incomprehensible just hours before. This is what we are offering the galaxy, Kane explained in a final broadcast to all ships. Not conquest, but evolution. Not domination, but cooperation. The universe is vast and full of wonders we have only begun to explore, but we cannot explore